Discovered. The billionaire's son spat at Nannies, yet shared a touching kiss with one black maid. Ethan Thompson stood in the grand kitchen of his family's Silicon Valley estate, simmering with the fury of a dammed-up river. He despised the sterile perfection that filled every corner, the shiny countertops gleaming under modern LED lights, all reminders of a life he never chose. He stirred his coffee with an unsteady hand, gazing out the massive glass windows at the sprawling lawn, the swimming pool, and the elaborate play structures for children he'd never dared attempt. Around him, the staff bustled about, invisible yet omnipresent, mere pawns in his mother's obsessive game of social standing. "You might as well add another layer to their gold-plated cages," he sneered at Amara, the newest housekeeper, as she passed by, her simple presence a stark contrast to the opulence suffocating him. "Look who decided to speak up," she shot back, her eyes flashing with defiance. She never flinched, not at his biting words or the way he flaunted his privilege like a shield. "Your privilege doesn't exempt you from basic decency, Ethan." Her voice was steady, an arresting force that pressed against his defenses like a relentless wave. He was entrapped in a life spun from expectations. The weight of his maim simmered like a pot ready to boil over. "Maybe I don't need your lessons on decency," he muttered, but the words tasted bitter. Was that longing for authenticity, he wondered, seeping through the armor he'd built? Once again, insecurities clawed at him. He was not the perfect heir his parents envisioned, a fact he sulked over amidst the excesses surrounding him. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Ethan winced at the memory of his father's scathing remarks just days earlier. Life lessons thrown at him like biocides in the tech lab, cold and impersonal. "If you weren't smart enough for Stanford, you should have stayed in school," echoing deeper fears, breaking him down in the most visceral of ways. The walls were closing in, and his resentment brewed. He felt like an outsider in a world he was bred to inherit, endlessly squashed by the gilded weight of a legacy he had no interest in upholding. Amara's presence was a reminder of everything foreign and raw. She painted color in his gray existence. Staring at her, something shifted. In a fleeting moment, their eyes locked, and something electric surged between them, igniting a flame in the cold steel of that kitchen. As if daring him, she approached, bridging the gap between their worlds. He leaned in, feeling reckless, desperate. Their lips brushed, trembling and sweet, and in that instant, everything he knew shattered. There was an authenticity in the kiss, a stark contrast to the loneliness that accompanied his privilege. But anxiety seeped in as quickly as it surged. What did this mean? Another expectation loomed on the horizon, and he felt his carefully structured world begin to tilt. How could he reconcile this moment with the life already mapped out for him? And as it hung in the air like a heavy storm, he wondered, could he salvage something real from the wreckage of his heritage? Or was he doomed to repeat the cycle of emptiness that came with being the billionaire's son? His heart raced, and he clenched his fists as Amara stepped back, uncertainty swirling in her gaze. The truth loomed larger than ever, and the chains of expectation felt tighter around him. Ethan stared at the mosaic of colors splashed across the bathroom tiles, the harsh lines echoing the tangled mess of his emotions. The kiss with Amara was still fresh, a spark igniting uncharted territories within him. But as soon as he closed his eyes, layers of expectation pressed down hard. And every polite smile, each carefully orchestrated pleasantry he had internalized over the years, loomed large. Was that really him? The thought churned within him as he glanced into the mirror, the reflection staring back, vacant yet questioning. He stepped back into the living area. The vibrant chaos of voices and footsteps ebbed around him, each staff member moving efficiently, but their lives felt tethered to the house's grand structure, just like he was. What if they were all just as entrapped as he was? That fleeting moment with Amara flickered in his mind, the authenticity of her defiance challenging him in ways he hadn't expected. If he could open up a conversation with her, could she help him make sense of this emotional upheaval? Seizing the moment, he searched through the house, determined to locate her. Finding her in a quiet nook of the laundry room, folding linens, the mundane task, still an art form in her capable hands, reminded him of the stark contrast between them. He cleared his throat, his voice trembling but resolute. "Amara?" She looked up, her brow slightly arched as if analyzing his intent. "Yes, Ethan. Can we talk?" The sheer weight of his words felt monumental, yet there was an intoxicating thrill in the air, something about this vulnerable exchange offering him the potential for clarity. About what? Her eyes were piercing, yet curious, scrutinizing. About what just happened, the kiss. He swallowed hard, panic fluttering in his stomach. If he was going to uncover what this emotion really meant, he needed to confront it directly. She straightened up, stopping her motion for a moment as if reconsidering the significance of her next words. "What are you feeling? Was it just a mistake, or did you feel something more?" Ethan paused, staggering under the weight of his own uncertainty. "I don't know. I feel trapped by expectations, by everything my family represents. And for a moment, with you, it felt real." She considered his words, her expression softening, unlocking a nuance in her gaze he hadn't noticed before. "Real is a scary thing, Ethan. It means stepping outside the fortress you've built. Are you willing to face that?" His pulse quickened, and for the first time in a long while, he embraced the concept of choice, the first genuine decision available to him. "I think I need to try, but I don't know how." They stood in the hushed space, her unwavering steadfastness presenting the first hint of a path, an invitation to rediscover parts of himself lost amid perceived obligations. "You have to confront your world, Ethan, all of it, not just the label of the billionaire son." Her words echoed deep within him, illuminating something buried beneath years of facade and expectations. With sinking dread, he realized how little he understood about his own perspective. What if all along he had been scrambling in the dark? I'm willing," he asserted, a flicker of resolve igniting just behind the fear. "Good," she said softly, "but it might be the hardest thing you'll ever face." The gravity of their conversation began to weigh on him, yet a sense of empowerment burrowed itself within his heart. Could he really begin this journey? The question itself forced him to confront his fabricated identity, carved from privilege and positioning. As they talked, exchanging ideas and doubts, something like hope blossomed. He leaned on her perspective, exploring how to break the chains binding him. But with invasions from his mother's disciples and the weight of expectations pressing ever heavier, doubts began to creep in again. Could a new beginning truly shift the course of his life? Ethan ultimately found himself staring out onto the expansive view of the estate, where the shadows of his family's aspirations thickened ahead. Was he ready to face everything they stood for? Amara's presence lingered in his thoughts. Another surge of courage erupted within him. The time had come to face not only the legacy threatening to define him, but himself in the process. Just as he was beginning to imagine a life untethered from legacy, the firm grip of his father's voice echoed in his mind, a bitter reminder that their expectations wouldn't allow for missteps. His heart raced once again at the thought of the confrontation ahead. Could he muster the strength to stand against the very foundation of his identity? It was time to step into the unknown. Ethan stepped away from the vast windows, the weight of the estate behind him feeling momentarily suffocating. Each corner of the foyer seemed to echo with the ghosts of his father's critiques, the polished marble beneath his feet a stark reminder of the perfection expected of him. As the walls closed in, he ached for the unfiltered, honest exchange he had just shared with Amara, a brief oasis amid a desert of expectations. He took a deep breath and headed towards the library, a somber space filled with the titans of literature that had been hand-picked by his parents. Each shelf screamed tradition, yet beneath the stoic surface of leather and wood, Ethan yearned for anything different, something unconventional. The books offered guidance, yet also reflected back the life he felt compelled to live. Each spine, a spine-chilling reminder of duties, goals, and familial ambition. What if he repudiated it all? He dismissed the thought immediately. It sent unsettling shivers through his gut. The idea of choosing a path that diverged from the meticulously paved road laid out for him was terrifying. Yet, wasn't that what he had just started with Amara? Wasn't that kiss an invitation to reclaim who he was beyond the gilded cage? He sank into a plush chair and opened one of the thick volumes. Its pages inhaled captivation, when suddenly he was more interested in the sunlight filtering through the windows, a reminder of the outside world. The mundanity encased him like a cocoon he longed to break. Amara's question echoed back. Was he truly prepared to confront the fortress of expectations? Decision after decision flowed through his mind. He could engage in the family business that was waiting, the one everyone assumed would be his destined role. Or he could explore the possibilities that stretched out like arms of trees beckoning to be climbed, reaching heights unknown to him. Suddenly, the prospect of pursuing the artistic endeavors he had only whispered to himself became intoxicating. As hours flickered by, the library felt more like a suffocating chamber, and he realized he was stalling. It was time to test his resolve, not just internally, but externally. He would talk to his father, confront him about stepping away from the planned future, laying bare the dreams that darkness had long suppressed. That evening, as glimmers of dusk spread across the estate, he found his father in the home office, one hand sorting through papers while his other grasped a scotch glass, the silhouettes of authority and control neatly imprinted within his features. "Father?" Ethan's voice broke through the room's tense atmosphere, filled with the sharper undertones of expectation. His father's gaze bore into him, confusion blossoming momentarily atop his otherwise immovable facade. "We need to discuss your role next quarter, Ethan, your contribution—" "Dad, wait," Ethan interrupted, urgency cracking his words. "I need to talk about something that matters more than business. I am not ready to step into the role you envision for me." That evening, as glimmers of dusk spread across the estate, he found his father in the home office, one hand sorting through papers while his other grasped a scotch glass, the silhouettes of authority and control neatly imprinted within his features. "Father?" Ethan's voice broke through the room's tense atmosphere, filled with the sharper undertones of expectation. His father's gaze bore into him, confusion blossoming momentarily atop his otherwise immovable facade. "We need to discuss your role next quarter, Ethan, your contribution—" "Dad, wait," Ethan interrupted, urgency cracking his words. "I need to talk about something that matters more than business. I am not ready to step into the role you envision for me." His father's furrowed brows deepened, the uncharacteristic boldness from Ethan catching him off guard. "What do you mean you're not ready? We've been planning for this." "But I want something different," he shot back, the fire now igniting behind his eyes. "A different path." The tension thickened, a palpable wall that seemed to obscure the heart of the matter. Each second that passed felt carved from stone, and Ethan could almost feel the inevitable discussion of legacy and reputation brewing on the tip of his father's tongue. He braced for impact, knowing the confrontation held implications far beyond his immediate desires. He had drawn the line. Now it was time to stand firm behind it. "What do you mean, different?" His father's voice dipped into skepticism, tinged with disbelief that crushed deeper than mere words. Ethan's heart thumped louder in his chest, every beat resonating with a fierce need for autonomy. He would not back down. "I want to explore my passion for art, travel, and discover parts of myself that have been neglected. I need to formulate my own identity beyond the family name." The silence hung heavy, vibrating with mixed emotions: confrontation, fear, the lingering adrenaline of defiance. Perhaps he wasn't just fighting against his father's expectations, he was fighting for his newly discovered self. Steeling his resolve, he prepared for the deluge of rebuttals, ready to defend not just a career path, but his right to live authentically. Would his father ever understand? As Ethan readied himself for the impending clash, the door creaked open, a tumultuous storm of emotion brewing within him. Yet beneath it all, a flicker of hope remained. He was standing up, stepping away from shadows. Could this be the moment change began? The air crackled, thick with tension. Would he overcome the legacy and emerge free to explore his true aspirations? Or would he remain both the son and the prisoner of expectation? The answer loomed just on the horizon, uncharted and unstable. Ethan stood before his father, a tempest swirling through the tension-laden air. The weight of generations pushed against him, each breath drawing in history tinged with expectations. Yet, surprisingly, there was a spark igniting within him that transformed fear into an electric current of boldness. This was a defining moment, and he teetered on the brink of clarity. "Ethan," his father started, his voice slicing through the charged silence, "this is reckless. You know the sacrifices that have been made for this family." Ethan squared his shoulders, a surge of rebellion coursing through him. Isn't it reckless to live someone else's dream? He could hear the tremor in his voice and swallowed hard, not backing down. "I need to figure out who I am, away from what you and the family expect. I won't be content as just the heir forever." His father's features, etched with lines of authority and disappointment, transformed slightly, shading into something resembling concern. "This isn't about just you. There are responsibilities, legacies at stake. You can't just throw them away." "Then why can't I craft my own legacy?" Ethan pressed, his mind racing forward. What awaited him on the other side of this confrontation was unclear, but he could smell the promise of autonomy. "You'll understand when you're older," his father began again, but Ethan interjected sharply, feeling the heat of his conviction. "I am older. I'm done waiting for someone else to define my path." It was a raw truth that spilled out, each word fueled by the fearlessness he felt during his moment with Amara. His father's eyes narrowed, weighing Ethan's words like stones in a scale. "What do you propose instead?" Ethan took a deep, grounding breath. Here was the crux of it all. If he couldn't just throw away the family's expectations, he needed to form his own vision. "I want to go to art school, travel, and create. I need to express myself, not just follow a boardroom table. I want to take risks and find out what I can actually contribute to the world." His father leaned back, folding his arms with a clenched jaw. "That's a ridiculous fantasy. You think this will bring you happiness?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. "But I do know that playing it safe makes me miserable. If I waste my life following a script I don't believe in, then what's the point? For the first time, his father was speechless. The bluntness of that statement hung between them, and Ethan could almost hear his father's mind racing through a series of rebuttals that never materialized. In that pause, the illusion of power shifted, and suddenly, Ethan sensed a glimmer of understanding reflected back at him, not just from his father, but within himself. Yet a small shadow of doubt crept in. What if pursuing a path of passion was just a foolish dream? What if he failed, leaving behind nothing but hushed whispers of disappointment? Before he could spiral further, his father finally spoke, though with a softened tone. Finding yourself doesn't mean severing ties. You could explore these aspirations while still contributing to the business. Ethan faltered. Could there be a middle ground? The thought intrigued him, a way to carve his path without fully rejecting the family's legacy. I'd need to define what that means, set my own conditions. Then let's explore your artistic endeavors and see if they hold water, his father replied, a hint of cautious optimism threading through the skepticism. It was a small concession, yet it felt momentous, the first crack in the wall of expectations. Ethan's heart quickened. There might be space for him to grow, to stretch his wings without abandoning his roots entirely. The choice was becoming less about combat and more about collaboration. Just then, as thoughts rushed in like a tide, another question emerged, igniting the urgency within him. What if he could leverage this moment and turn it into something greater? If I take a year to pursue this path, will you support me? Pause. That single word seemed to hang there like a police siren blaring in the night. Yet, just as Ethan noticed the stranglehold of the moment, his father let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. I need to think about this, but perhaps we can come to an agreement. For the first time, the conversation lacked a clearly defined ending, instead teetering on the edge of possibilities as both men navigated unfamiliar territory together. Ethan's mind raced with excitement and fear. His world had just tilted a fraction. The beginning of change was here, but it bore no guarantees. He could taste both hope and uncertainty in the air, mingling into something intoxicating. As he stepped back, leaving his father in the room, creativity pulled at his very core. What would his first steps look like? What kind of artist would he become? Even as he left the den of expectations, he couldn't shake the question. Would he manage to embrace this new frontier, or fall prey to the very chains he hoped to break? The boundary between self-definition and inherited legacy felt thinner than it had in moments before. With determination, he now faced the realization that it was not merely a battle, but a journey of discovery that had just begun, leaving behind a wake of questions echoing with each stride forward into the unknown. Ethan awoke the next morning to a muted world. The usual cacophony of family chatter and the rhythmic hum of life outside were drowned in his thoughts. After yesterday's confrontation, he felt as though he stood on the precipice of a new existence. An exhilarating mix of enthusiasm and trepidation coursed through him, invading every corner of his mind. His first instinct was to reach for a sketchbook, the blank pages inviting him to pour out his emotions. He found one buried in an old drawer, its cover worn and its corners frayed. As he flipped it open, he was transported back to a time when art was a sanctuary, a safe haven from the relentless expectations of his lineage. But the reality of his decision loomed large. How would he balance this new direction while considering his family legacy? Could he create something original, something that wouldn't be dismissed as merely fanciful? The thought gnawed at him. He needed clarity, a plan. With determination, Ethan settled into a routine. Each morning, he carved out 2 hours solely for his art practice. Those hours became sacred, crafting a renewed sense of purpose. He lost himself in colors and shapes as he explored styles reminiscent of the great masters, the bold brushstrokes of Van Gogh, the delicate touches of Monet. The paint splatters became an escape, a means to define who he was amidst family standards that felt more suffocating by the day. From the moment he walked into the art supply store, he felt transformed. The dizzying display of canvases, pastels, and paint tubes was intoxicating. Each item held the promise of creativity. He chatted excitedly with the store clerk, who recognized the passion igniting within him. Their conversation flowed, hinting that he wasn't merely an aristocrat's son stumbling into art. He was seen as a fellow artist, someone capable of genuine expression. With fresh supplies, Ethan struck out to local parks, sketching scenes of life in motion. He reveled in painting the mallards gliding past the weeping willows, the laughter of children chasing each other on the grass. The world became a canvas, and he realized he could reveal the beauty in his surroundings through his eyes. Each stroke of his brush was a declaration. He was claiming his place in the world, breaking free from the confines that had once defined him. Yet, as the days unfolded, doubts began to lurk at the edges of his thoughts. He was still expected to take over the family business and contribute to a legacy that had already been laid out like a map. What if he couldn't succeed as an artist? What if he became a disgrace? That fear had the power to pull him back into uncertainty, shaping the shadows of every sunset he painted. Finally, he knew he had to confront his father again. This wouldn't be just about getting approval. It had to be about establishing parameters for his dual existence. He scribbled notes for their next discussion, each bullet point reflecting what he hoped to gain. Support, not only in words, but in tangible opportunities to showcase his work in cities that prided themselves on innovation and creativity. As the meeting approached, Ethan wrestled with anxiety and anticipation. What if his father scaled back the agreement? The prospect of losing the ground he had gained fueled his determination to represent himself, not just as his father's son, but as an artist with dreams blooming like wildflowers on the edges of expectations. The day arrived. Standing in front of his father, Ethan felt the weight of both interests intertwined. "I want to showcase my work," he began earnestly, gauging the intensity in his father's familiar gaze. Would this be the moment that led to both liberation and approval, or the moment that shattered all he had just begun to build? The silence felt thick, as if it had a weight of its own. As he continued, he realized that he was prepared to fight for this newfound purpose with every ounce of conviction he possessed. Something had to give, and he was ready for the truth of it. Would it signal the beginning of a partnership or a war of wills? There was no turning back now. Ethan's heart raced, the tension palpable in the air as his father considered his request. The weight of unspoken expectations churned within him, amplifying every moment of silence between them into an eternity. Could he really confront the patriarch of his family, one whose very presence was a reminder of the traditional blueprint he was meant to follow? When his father finally broke the silence, Ethan held his breath, straining to catch the words that would determine the course of his future. "Art, Ethan, a distraction from your responsibilities," his father said, condescension lacing his tone. "You do realize how precious family legacy is, don't you?" Ethan's pulse quickened. It was a challenge, and he sensed his father's intention to undermine his aspirations. Fire ignited within him. "It's not a distraction, it's a calling. I need to share my vision with the world, not as a mere footnote of this family," he countered, his voice steadying despite the storm raging in his gut. His father studied him, brow furrowing ever so slightly. The tension in the room shifted as Ethan felt an unexpected surge of courage, urging him to delve deeper. "Art isn't just what I want to do, it defines who I am." If I don't pursue it, I will merely exist, a shadow of what you wish me to be." To Ethan's shock, his father remained silent, his expression inscrutable. The moment stretched anew. In that silence, doubt crept back in. What if he was mistaken? What if he was better suited to upholding the family name? But remembering the vibrant colors dancing in his mind, he dismissed it, reaffirming his commitment. With renewed vigor, Ethan leaned forward, his voice laced with passion. "I want the chance to exhibit my paintings in the city. I want to connect with people who feel what I feel when they witness my work. I need your support to make this possible, not just words, but to help catapult me into that world." His father's eyes flashed, a mix of surprise and disdain. "If you cannot keep your priorities straight, I will not indulge your fantasies. It's your future at stake, Ethan." Each word felt like a dagger, puncturing the fragile hope he had nurtured, yet the flame inside him refused to extinguish. Ethan stood taller. "But what if my future is not in those rigid frameworks? What if I can redefine our legacy through creativity and authenticity?" The defiance invigorated him. He was no longer just pleading for approval. He was demanding acknowledgement as an artist worthy of respect. His father's jaw clenched. "This is foolishness. You risk everything for a whimsical pursuit," he spat. Yet Ethan could see the minuscule crack in his facade, a flicker of uncertainty. "Is building a family business worth more than nurturing a true passion?" Ethan pressed, drawing strength from the conviction flooding through him. Feeling the battle intensifying, conflicting emotions surged, but Ethan leaned into the discomfort. He was ready to stand alone if necessary. This was about asserting his identity and reclaiming the narrative of his life. The dream seemed further away than ever, but it was his dream. In that moment, the dance of family legacy and individual passion reached a precarious balance. Would his father relent, or would this confrontation mark the definitive rupture between them? Beneath the surface of their duel lay a truth yet to be uncovered. The real question was whether their aspirations could coexist. As Ethan's resolve solidified, he understood that the battle was not merely for his artistic freedom. It extended into the realm of redefining the bond between father and son. The path ahead looked both turbulent and promising, but with each stroke of rebellion against tradition, he felt a sense of liberation building within. Homemade position set, he fixed his gaze on his father, ready for what might come next. The sharp inhale of their next exchange hung heavy in the air, the tension pregnant with possibilities. Perhaps what he truly needed to discover was not just his own voice, but how to bridge the chasm that stood between them. Would he emerge from this confrontation as an artist, or merely be trapped in a perpetual dance of disappointment? The stakes had never been higher, and the moment of truth loomed on the horizon, waiting for its chance to strike. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest, each second pulling him from the moment into the clamoring thoughts racing in his mind. As he stared at his father, the walls felt as if they were closing in, enveloping him in an isolation that was both suffocating and liberating. He could feel the weight of expectations, each one like a chain binding him further to a path he passionately rejected. The distance between them was palpable, yet he knew he had to bridge it if he wanted to be more than an echo of familial ambition. As his father's expression hardened, Ethan's stomach twisted. "You believe that by pursuing this passion, you're somehow enlightening the family name? This is reckless." His father's voice was a sinuous whip, lashing out with authority that seemed to settle like an oppressive fog. Yet buried beneath that command was an undercurrent of concern, fear of losing his son to a world he could not control. Reckless or brave, Ethan interjected, surprising even himself with the confidence that burst forth. "You're afraid of the unknown, Dad, but my ambition is rooted in something profound. I want my art to resonate with others, to ignite conversations. I can create a legacy that's alive and real, rather than one dictated by duty." His father's face twisted in irritation, but Ethan noticed the flicker of something deeper in those steely eyes. It was then that he realized his challenge wasn't just to convince his father of his dreams, but to challenge the very foundation of hesitation that had stood between them for years. "Do you think I haven't dreamed of more? That I didn't have aspirations beyond this business?" His father's response caught Ethan off guard, revealing a glimpse of the man behind the ironclad persona. "I sacrificed for this family. You think it was easy?" Ethan's mind raced. Here was a crack, a moment of vulnerability. He could extend a hand or throw it back in the fire of confrontation. "I don't want you to carry my dreams for me. I want to carry my own, with your support, not your weight." The room was still, the tension wrapping around both of them like a taut string, threatening to snap. For the first time, Ethan considered what it would mean to reconcile both dreams, his father's dreams for him and his own. Could he honor one without extinguishing the other? He refused to see their confrontation as a battle anymore. Rather, it felt like an examination of truths unspoken, raw and painful. Ethan decided he would not retreat. "You want legacy? Then let me create one that breathes creativity. Let's build together a family legacy that grows with us, not one that binds us." His voice shook slightly, but the earnestness in it felt grounded and real. He watched as his father's features shifted, the rigid mask softening just enough for Ethan to catch a glimpse of the conflicted father hiding beneath the demanding figure. "You may pursue your art, but don't expect me to support a foolish chase," his father began. "Why can't pursuing my passion be a pursuit of the family name?" Ethan pressed, a wave of desperation mingling with hope. The juxtaposition ignited something new within him, a vision not just for his future, but for the potential revival of their relationship. The moment hung suspended, a critical choice danced on the edge of possibility. Would his father cling to convention, or embrace the unknown potential of a son willing to reshape their story? Ethan's determination surged, emboldened by the prospect of revelation, not only of himself as an artist, but also of the man sitting across from him, who may just need this leap of faith as much as he did. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, slicing through the tension like a knife. It startled Ethan, pulling both him and his father from the emotional precipice they teetered on. Who could that be? His father's brow furrowed with annoyance. Ethan's instincts flared. Perhaps this interruption was serendipitous, or perhaps it was a harbinger of change. He felt an urgency crystallize within him. He needed to confront more than just his father. Something greater awaited on the other side of this moment. What awaited him could alter not just their previously rigid relationship, but the very essence of his future. With a glance back at his father, Ethan prepared himself for whatever reality lay waiting just beyond the threshold. Would this turn of events shift their dynamic for good, or was it merely a prelude to deeper conflicts? Ethan hesitated for a moment, the doorbell echoing in his mind like a herald of change, uncertainty clawing at him from within. He glanced back at his father, whose irritation had transformed into a cautious curiosity. That brief flicker of vulnerability seemed replaced by a guardedness that made Ethan wonder just how much control his father had over this household and his life. "Shouldn't you get that?" his father urged, a hint of irritation creeping back into his voice. A challenge lingered there, as if not answering would somehow prove his father's point about him being reckless.
Swallowing hard, Ethan moved to the door, his heart pounding with the thoughts of their intensifying conversation. The air outside felt charged with anticipation as he opened the door, revealing a woman standing on the patio with a clipboard in hand and a warm smile that somehow softened the weight hanging in the air. "Hi, I'm Ava," she introduced herself, her voice upbeat but sincere. "I'm here to discuss the opening for the art exhibit you applied for." Ethan blinked, momentarily thrown. The chance he had almost dismissed as a distant ambition was now standing on his porch, tangible and real, like the possibility of connecting with his passion through professional validation. His pulse quickened. This was exactly what he needed, a potential ally who could pull him from the limbo he felt trapped in. "Right, yes, come in," he stammered, leading her inside while he felt his father's sharp gaze following him through the doorway, guarded and skeptical. "Mr. Sterling," she greeted his father with respect, making Ethan realize the weighted presence he still had in their household. "Ethan mentioned an exhibition," his father said, the tension in his voice making Ethan's gut twist. "Is that wise? Are you prepared for what that entails?" Ava's demeanor remained unfazed by the paternal authority filling the room. "Pursuing your passion is never foolish. It takes courage to step into the unknown, and I sense Ethan has that courage." Ethan's spirits lifted. He wasn't just an echo of his father's ambitions anymore. Her words were a simple validation, but served as a catalyst for the resolve he was building. "Can we talk about what your vision is for the exhibit?" she asked, her eyes brightening as she focused on him. With Ava's invitation, Ethan felt a knot inside him loosen. "I want to bridge the gap between personal expression and artistic expression," he explained, his voice steadier. "Art can convey what words often fail to capture." "Exactly," she agreed, listening attentively as he spoke, a small smile spreading across her lips. In that moment, Ethan felt the power of his voice and vision crystallize. This was not just about art. It was also about reclaiming his identity, finding validation where he had thought he would only meet resistance. His father stood silent, a blend of disapproval and confusion washing over him like shadows clinging to his features. But Ethan chose to ignore that doubt. "Let me show you some of my work," he offered, determination coloring his tone.
The spark within him ignited, and he guided Ava into the small studio he'd set up in the corner of his home, a space he cherished as the one refuge in his father's carefully curated world. As he revealed his pieces, each stroke of paint facilitated a discussion about artistry that transcended casual commentary. Ava's eyes lit up with every color and narrative intertwined in his work. Here, he was not just the son of a businessman, but an artist with depth and intention. This moment was transformative. Yet, as Ethan showcased his paintings, he couldn't shake the awareness of his father's silent scrutiny. Would his father be able to accept this unfolding version of Ethan, who was taking steps, albeit small ones, towards becoming his own person? Would his willingness to defend this path against his father's skeptical glare be enough? With every vibrant color he displayed, Ethan understood he was not just defining his art, but redefining his place within his family. Just as he felt unshackled, the door behind him creaked slightly, and, prompted by the sudden warmth, he turned to find his father lingering just outside the threshold of the studio. "Why are you fighting against your own family?" his father finally asked, the question heavy with previous tensions. This was the moment Ethan had both anticipated and dreaded, the confrontation of identities. Just as he felt the pressure of expectation tightening again, he knew he had to answer not just for himself, but for the future he envisioned, one that included his father, but on different terms. "Because I believe this choice can unite us instead of divide us," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling within. The possibility was palpable, but what would his father choose to do with it? Would he step closer or retreat further into the confines of tradition? Ethan's heart raced as he awaited the response that could redefine everything once more. Ethan felt the air thicken as his father's question hung like an unresolved chord. He watched his father's expression twist with tension, a mixture of disbelief and frustration. In this moment, the roles felt reversed. He was no longer just the reluctant son pleading for acknowledgement. He was an artist asserting his identity against the expectations that had shaped his life for far too long. "You think this will bring us together?" his father said incredulously, crossing his arms. "You think I want you to chase some foolish dream while there are real responsibilities awaiting you?" Ethan could feel heat creeping up his neck, anger bubbling beneath the surface, as he fought to keep his expression neutral. "It's not foolish to want to express myself. I didn't ask to be a businessman, Dad. This isn't about abandoning our family. It's about embracing who I am." A silence stretched between them, heavy and charged, the kind of silence that echoed with everything unspoken.
Ava, sensing the shift, stood slightly back, her clipboard forgotten as she watched, her eyes flitting between father and son. Ethan seized the moment, driven by his own conviction. "You've always pushed for success in a world defined by profit and power, but you never considered how that imposed a cage on me. I can't continue living just to fulfill that vision." His father's brow furrowed, conflicted emotions flaring in his eyes. Ethan held his breath, his determination tethered to this moment. It was a confrontation he had envisioned countless times, but now faced in flesh and blood. "Can't you see? We're part of something larger, Ethan. Our family means legacy." His father's voice trembled slightly, hinting at vulnerability. "Legacy or a prison?" Ethan pressed, feeling the adrenaline surge through him. "I can create my legacy through my art. I want that honor, Dad, not the burden of your expectations. What if I could honor you through my work? Show the world we are more than just our names." The tension crackled, challenge and hope dancing in the air between them. His father shifted uncomfortably, wrestling with the dilemma that lay bare before him. Ava stepped forward, breaking the momentary stalemate. "I think what Ethan is trying to convey is essential. This exhibit could be an opportunity for him to not only express himself, but to also invite everyone, including you, to understand his perspective." The mention of everyone struck a chord. Ethan sensed that he had a powerful ally in Ava, one who might help bridge the chasm that existed between him and his father. Would this art exhibit become more than just a display of paintings? Could it serve as a canvas for their unresolved relationship? His father sighed, emotions swirling as he rubbed a hand over his face. "Fine," he finally said, the word almost incredulous. "But you better be ready to put everything you've got into this. No half measures. If this is going to be your path, it must be taken seriously." Ethan's heart soared, not just at the words, but at the shift in his father's tone. There was an acceptance there, a possibility of understanding. "I will." His voice quaked slightly with emotion, and for the first time he felt the threat of rejection begin to dissipate. As they both stood in the studio, a space once filled only with fear, and now hope, Ethan began to envision the future unfolding before him, one colored by potential rather than limitation. Collaborating with Ava, he felt invigorated and willing to explore realms of creativity that had once felt out of reach. Yet, as doubt crept back in, the question loomed: would one moment of agreement truly lead to change? Could his father embrace not only his art, but also the new kind of relationship they were carving out? Ethan began to sketch a plan before him, not just for the exhibit, but for himself. A future that was authentically lived, devoid of the expectations forged from his father's ambitions.
But would his resolve withstand the scrutiny of family and the societal definitions of success they both had been accustomed to? Ethan could not shake that fear from the back of his mind. The door to the studio creaked again. Just as Ethan turned, he heard a sharp knock.
echoing the tension that still simmered between them. This interruption felt too coincidental, pulling their fragile moment apart. Who could it be now? Ethan's heart raced anew, curiosity mingling with anxiety as he approached the door once more. Maybe this visit would redefine everything yet again. Ethan opened the door to find a familiar face, his childhood friend Liam, standing on the threshold with bright eyes and an eager smile. "Hey, Ethan, I heard you were pursuing art now. I came to see how you're doing." His enthusiasm was infectious, a reminder of the simpler times before legacy and expectations suffocated authenticity. "Hey, Liam," Ethan replied, stepping aside to let him in, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. The two exchanged pleasantries, but Ethan's pulse quickened as he noticed his father still lingering in the background, watching intently. "Great to see you. Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to share the depths of his ongoing transformation amidst the unfinished conversation about his art exhibit. But he felt a commitment to authenticity take precedence. "I'm preparing for an art exhibit. I'm really trying to define my own path." Liam's face lit up. "That's amazing! I always knew you'd go for it. Art has always been your passion." Ethan's heart swelled. However, he sensed his father's scrutiny intensify, the faintest hint of disapproval etched into his features. "Your passion?" his father interjected, skepticism coating his words. Ethan felt a jolt of dread. It was time to rectify that lingering tension. "Yes, Dad," Ethan replied, with a steadiness he previously lacked. "Art is my passion. I am creating something that's authentically mine, not just a reflection of what others expect of me." Liam seemed to sense the electric tension in the room. "He's serious, Mr. Sterling. This is the chance for him to show the world not just his art, but who he really is." Ethan could see his father wrestling with acceptance, inner conflict playing out before him. "Passion won't pay the bills, Ethan. It doesn't build a future." "But what about a future I want?" Ethan countered, a rush of determination flooding through. With Liam's presence, Ethan felt emboldened. What if, instead of merely having a family business, I could contribute to the legacy with something that makes me whole? Wouldn't that bring pride? His father shifted, visibly conflicted, each facial twitch a reflection of his wrestle between the fatherly desire for security and the struggle to accept his son's pivot toward authenticity.
"Art doesn't always translate to stability." "Maybe not in your view," Ethan asserted, taking a breath to restructure his emotions for clarity. "But can't you see how deeply it fuels me? This isn't just about being responsible. This is about being free." A heavy silence weighed on them, and Ethan saw Liam nodding, his approval adding to Ethan's conviction. "Art can provide a platform. It can change lives. And if I don't step into my truth now, I'll just be another name associated with our family's expectations." The sincerity hung in the air, and finally his father, now battered by sincerity and passion, spoke again. "What if we collaborated? What if I helped sponsor the exhibit?" Each word felt like a revelation, rippling through the tense atmosphere. "You would?" Ethan stammered, astonished by the proposition. "Art can have a valuable economic aspect as well. Let's say we find a middle ground," his father offered, voicing the bridge Ethan sensed they were building. "I'll help bring your work to the forefront, but you have to keep pulling your weight with the business." "Maybe we can redefine what that means for both of us," Ethan said, his heart fluttering at the possibility, eyes scanning Liam's for encouragement. "Consider it an investment, Ethan," his father continued, a hint of warmth woven into his usually stoic demeanor. "We can showcase how your talents can complement our family legacy. If you succeed, there's real merit in it for both of us." This was a watershed moment. Ethan's dreams were alive, carving out space amid familial expectations. "Absolutely, Dad. I'm ready," he responded resolutely, feeling the warmth of encouragement rise. As the conversation flowed into laughter about creative potential spanning between different art styles, Ethan felt a sense of triumph wash over him. Not only did he reclaim his identity, but he had also fostered a budding collaboration with his father that might just go beyond art, begrudgingly turning into partnership. As they exchanged ideas, Ethan reflected on how far he had come. Freed from the constraints of languishing expectations, he stood poised, not merely as the billionaire's son, but as an artist discovering a newfound purpose away from perfection and towards passion. With each passing moment, clarity established itself more solidly around him. Eventually, he would paint a world colored in authenticity, one that fused legacy with individuality, redefining what it meant to be part of a family while remaining true to himself. Standing alongside Liam and with respect toward his father, he envisioned gallery walls echoing with their shared stories, walls where the language of passion would convey a legacy transforming and breathing. Ethan took a deep breath, exhilaration humming through him. It was not just the birth of an exhibit, it was the epitome of his victory, the layered narrative of a life created by his own hand, shaping himself into a vibrant tapestry that could stand independently. He was, indeed, ready. Now there was just one chance, that moment to grasp and hold. The truth of transformation awaited him. Your support is crucial for stories like Ethan's to be told. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help our community grow. Comment your reactions and theories about Ethan's transformation, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.